Welcome again to the Minnesota Historical Society's programs in honor of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And today we take on the issue of the legacy of leadership in historically Black colleges and universities. Before we begin with tonight's program, we do want to do a land acknowledgement, as we always do. And so we want to begin by recognizing that even though we're in a virtual space, we're on the ancestral homelands of the Dakota and Ojibwe people. And we want to pay respects to the elders, past and present. And we'd also like to honor the past and present and ongoing efforts of the Dakota and Ojibwe people to steward and care for this land. And now for tonight's program, we have an amazing slate of guests who are going to join us to talk about the legacy of historically Black colleges and universities, which we know have been instrumental in the struggle for Black equality in the United States. In fact, when we talk about the great gains made by people of color in the United States, it would not have been possible without the fine graduates from some of the most outstanding academic institutions in the country. From Howard to Xavier to Hampton, Black colleges and universities have been integral to the African-American experience. They've produced authors, scientists, presidents of universities, and now a vice president of the United States in Kamala Harris. And here to talk about that experience with us first is, and we'll have Ned put those up for us, Mercedes Henderson Clark. Mercedes is a St. Paul native and proud graduate of Hampton University. She is COO of Dolores Works Incorporated and has a long-standing commitment to education and helping children reach their potential. She continues to live the essence of Hampton's mission in her work. She's also a proud member of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Next, we have Justin Tanner, a seasoned government relations professional who has served as the executive director of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, a White House appointee in the Obama administration, and a policy aide to former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed. Justin is also a proud graduate, as am I, of Howard University and a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Alpha Chapter. And last but not least, our most recent graduate from the HBCU experience, Keisha Murray is a finance professional at General Mills. She's passionate about uplifting the next generation of brilliant minds by mentoring, educating, and exposing young people to the countless opportunities ahead of them. Keisha is a proud graduate of Xavier University of Louisiana and is also a proud member of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And now we want to move on to our panel. I want to jump right into this. We ran out of time yesterday because the conversation was so animated, but I think now more than ever, a conversation about the contributions of historically Black colleges and universities is pertinent. And so I want to begin with our most recent graduate, Keisha. Keisha, can you tell us why you chose the historically Black college and university experience for your undergraduate experience and what you took away from being able to study at Xavier University?
Definitely, that is a great question. I would say that I chose to go to an HBCU, and specifically Xavier University of Louisiana, because I have experienced my entire life what it's like to be a minority or a Black female. And I wanted to be in a space where I could have that layer of my identity be on the back burner, if you will, for a second. So see what it looks like to explore the other parts of my identity. And I would say what I took away from that was countless networking opportunities, an illustrious organization of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and a host of family and friends. So it was a phenomenal experience that I would not trade for the world. And as you can see, I was allowed to go through many different opportunities. One that's being shown is with UNCF in the bottom left corner. So the HBCU experience allowed me to open doors that I feel like I would never have experienced if I had not gone there.
Now, Keisha, I'm going to stay with you for just a minute because there is a strain of service that runs through your undergraduate experience to the work that you do now and your work in the community. Where does that come from, and how did your experience at Xavier help to elevate that in the work that you do now?
Yes, so I would say that I've always had a village that has took part in raising me, and I want to make sure that I pay it forward to the next generation. So whenever I learn something, I want to make sure that I can be a resource in any capacity. So although I am a finance professional, I have colleagues and friends and family that are engineers, that are doctors, that are lawyers, that are teachers. So I want to make sure that I can be the best resource to those who come after me, and just being a part of the different organizations that I am, including internal at work and external on my personal time, allows me to showcase those different parts of myself that otherwise I might not be able to show.
Thank you, Keisha. Mercedes, we now benefit from having your brilliance in the Twin Cities. But I'd like to know how Hampton University became your school of choice when you were casting about for your academic experience. What drew you to Hampton University?
Well, let's see. What drew me to Hampton University? First of all, my parents are proud HBCU alums. They both attended Wilberforce University, where my mother graduated, and my father, unfortunately, just left after one semester and pursued to finish his degree at the University of Minnesota. But they instilled in me the pride that they took from Wilberforce University based upon the expectations that were expected of them, as well as just the fraternization that they had or felt with their students. And so they implored upon me to pursue a degree at an HBCU. And my father and I had the opportunity to go college visiting. So we went to Howard University for a moment, and then we drove down to Hampton University. And just the reception that we felt when we arrived was incredible. Our tour guide was very personable. She was friendly. She knew everyone. She called my father sir. She implemented her Southern mentality. And so my father fell in love with that, as did I. And I happened to see a friend of mine from the Twin Cities who was there as a freshman. She asked me to spend the night, on campus. So I spent the night with her in her dorm and met all of her friends and sorority sisters and whatnot. And so that drew me and solidified my decision to attend Hampton University. So that's why I like to, in addition to the fact that I grew up in a predominantly European American environment. And so I was the only African American student in my school until third grade. And then another individual came and she elected to go to Howard. But we wanted to attend a school where we felt comfortable and we could be ourselves and people looked like us. So that's
You're all very important, Mercedes, but I want to stay with you for just a second because you have emphasized this very important connection to legacy. Yes. And how this was something, at least that your parents communicated to you, that was important. And a lot of people describe that in terms of the HBCU experience. Can you play that forward a little bit on why that was so important?
I think there's a richness in attending HBCUs. I mean, you feel so comfortable there, and the professors want you to succeed. They want you to excel. They're there to support you and to encourage you and to, I guess, challenge you, but a good challenge. So you challenge, if you would, because they want to see you succeed. And they do acknowledge the fact that you're kind of in a sheltered environment and that they want you all to do well, but they prepare you well for the real world. And so that's part of the rich legacy that HBCUs hold. And I hope to instill that within my children in the near future. So
that's fantastic. And we definitely want to continue that conversation because there are a lot of people watching today who are watching with young people who are now in the process of making that decision about where they'll attend. And I'm sure that's going to be one of the questions. Before we get there, though, Justin, I got to talk to you. I think, of all of our panelists, the incredible work that Mercedes does, Keisha's work in service in the community, but you embody a long tradition in the HBCU of being involved in politics and moving in spheres that look to change policy based on that experience. How did Howard University get you first? And how did your time at Howard influence your future trajectory in terms of your work in politics?
No, that's actually an interesting question, Dr. Williams. I initially attended Howard to become an entertainment lawyer. I had sites on law school. I had a couple of internships on Wall Street in New York. But September 11th was my senior year. And so I was exposed to a wide variety of leaders on campus. I remember Howard had a climate of political activism. And so we, in some instances, stormed the A building, demanding which is the administration building, demanding rights and demanding access to different things. And so it was actually interesting because my senior year, Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin was actually my commencement speaker. I had recently moved to Atlanta and ended up moving back there after law school. And 10 years to the day of my graduation, I ended up working on the campaign for the former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed, who was Mayor Franklin's campaign manager in two previous campaigns. And so through that experience, I learned about the rich tradition of African-American leadership in Atlanta from Maynard Jackson on. Atlanta has a unique history of having 6 African-American mayors, 3 of which, so Ambassador Andrew Young, Mayor Shirley Franklin, and Mayor Kasim Reed all went to Howard University. And so it's through that experience, learning from them, learning from my mentors, that I ended up pursuing a career in public service, which led to my service in the Obama administration, and now in my corporate capacity doing government affairs work. So I say all that to say Howard University changed my life. We had a number of leaders from Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall to Kamala Harris, who's now the Vice President-elect and Vice President as of tomorrow at 12 o'clock p.m. Mayor David Dinkins in New York, the first African-American mayor of New York City. So I can go on and on about the rich legacy of leadership at Howard, and that is something that's shaped my career.
Now, I'm going to keep you here for a minute, Justin, because I do want to talk about that history with you. I'm a fellow Howard graduate. I did not, graduate school. I didn't mention that because I didn't want to be accused of being partial to the HU experience. But I want to be clear, so much of the African-American freedom struggle, that the trails that were blazed through institutions like Hampton, like Xavier, and like Howard. Certainly, we could talk about Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton Houston. You mentioned David Dinkins, but I wondered if you would share, from your perspective, the importance of HU to the civil rights movement in particular, and how that speaks to our contemporary moment.
Oh, absolutely. I think as it relates to civil rights in particular, the Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall was instrumental in some of those, in playing a role in some of those early civil rights cases that led to us being seen as equal citizens. And Howard University's law school in particular is known for producing distinguished, jurists who have championed civil rights and equality, over a number of years. Vernon Jordan is another good example, somebody who advised, former President Clinton. So the list goes on, and I will say, tying it to the other panelists, I too grew up in predominantly Caucasian areas. I was actually born in Minnesota. I was born in Edina and lived in Bloomington before moving to North Suburban Chicago and then North Suburban Atlanta. And so for me, it was also a way that I could connect and see people who looked like me. I hadn't had a Black teacher the entire time growing up until I set foot on the campus of Howard University. So it was just an enriching experience. And again, just the tradition of activism. And, Howard had a culture. Our motto is actually leadership for America and the global community. And truth and service is what we strive for. So I think all those things. I would end by saying that my sister also is a proud graduate of Howard University, as is my cousin, Trina Tanner. So long legacy of Howard leaders. My parents both went to HBCUs. Mom went to Southern, dad went to Fayetteville State. Mom's a AKA, dad's a Omega, member of Omegas as well. My sister's an AKA. So just all those things. And the very, very last thing I would say is that for those who are interested in historically Black fraternities and sororities, Howard has a unique history of starting being the Alpha chapter, the first founding chapter for a number of those organizations, whether it's Delta Sigma Theta, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Omega Psi Phi, et cetera, et cetera. So I can go on and on, but I just want to defer the balance of my time to my two counterparts as well.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned Greek life at HBCUs, and I do want to talk about that. But I want to go back to a point that Mercedes raised, and Keisha as well. And you mentioned it as well, Justin. This idea that somehow, and I think about Ralph Ellison's book, The Invisible Man, prior to your experience on an HBCU campus, even with the strong foundations provided by your parents and those in your immediate family, all of you described coming from predominantly white environments and then going to Howard University. And we're talking cross-generational here. So Keisha, for you to describe that as being central to your experience and then to hear echoes of that in Mercedes and Justin's comments is important. We need to spend some time on that given the shadow of the moment that we're in. Mercedes, I want to begin with you. If you were counseling a young person today about the values of an HBCU education, the value and the values imparted, what would you say those were?
I would say that it's a place where you can feel comfortable and you can find your voice. If you haven't already, I think that HBCUs tap into your power and enable you to share it with the world. You can fail, you can struggle, but you'll still be uplifted and encouraged to continue on. It's just immeasurable, the opportunities that are available to you at HBCUs, from the love and the support and the hard knock challenges that are presented to you from your professors, by your professors consistently. It's challenging to an extent, but you know that it's all love. I had professors that would call you out. They would say, why weren't you in class? You were due here at 8, as it's 8:01. Why are you late? And you couldn't get mad at it. You know that they just wanted you to be there, to be present, to learn what they had to teach. So, yeah, I'd say that.
Thank you, Mercedes. Keisha, same question.
Definitely. I echo all of Mercedes' comments. I would just add on to that to say that going to Xavier allowed me to see that being excellent and being Black are allowed to be in the same sentence. It was never second guessed. It was never questioned. So you walk into those doors and they expect you actually to be excellent and to be great. It was never the stereotype of, I don't know if you'll succeed. I don't know if you'll make it. Which I oftentimes experience in my primary school learnings, having to defend myself and even having my village to defend me to say, no, she's capable. She is on the right track. She can make it. Don't take anything away from her because of one grade, which actually tried to occur when I was in school. So walking into the doors of Xavier, they're automatically on top of you. So similar to what Mercedes said, as they're looking at you every single day. I can recall going to class or missing one class to finish a paper or work on a test or something else for another one and passing the professor in the hallway and they're like, so why weren't you in my class today? And it's like, wait a minute. Okay, all right, got it. Let me show up tomorrow. So just that community and that desire to see you thrive in any adverse situation that you're in is unmatched, in my opinion.
Justin, I have to ask you to weigh in on that as well. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would only add, and all the comments were great, that, one of the things growing up that I heard about HBCUs was that if you go there, it's not the real world, right? It's not like working in corporate America or owning your own company, and you're going to have to deal with all kinds of different people. So the three things I would say in counter to that are number one, I grew up in the environments that I spoke about earlier all my life. So I know how to navigate through those environments. Number two, Howard was very diverse. We had students from all over the diaspora, whether it was from Trinidad and Tobago, whether it was from Europe, whether it was from literally Compton, California, right, and New York and Chicago and all these other cities, right? And so there was a very eclectic mix of sharp, intelligent, driven students that you could compete with. And the third thing is something that my parents instilled in me is that, you can always have the predominantly white, experience if you decide to pursue grad school, right? And so for me, like my panelists, it was an enriching environment for me to kind of learn about myself, and then take those learnings and apply them in graduate school. I went to Vanderbilt Law School. My parents also went to big graduate schools. They met at Wisconsin University, right? So you can still have that unique HBCU experience and then round it out with the PWI experience should you choose. But the last thing I would say is that, I don't knock anybody's experience, right? We're just proud of our schools, especially now. So please forgive the Howard alum in your life who are pretty much insufferable because they're talking about travel. But it's rare that we see our institutions in that much visibility. So we embrace it wholeheartedly.
It's interesting that way because there was a moment in our history when you were talking about the Black elite in this country that you would not have been able to talk about some of the movers and shakers in industry and arts and entertainment and law, politics and culture without talking about HBCUs. But I want to point something else out that you indicated that I think is very important for our audience to understand. Diversity at historically Black colleges and universities is actually in many cases far more than what you'd find at predominantly white institutions. The African diaspora is large. And so you have this mix of West Indian students from the continent of Africa, from all over the world, international students who mingle kind of seamlessly with the students in the population as a whole. And it creates this rich cultural experience. I know you know this, Justin, because we both spent plenty of time on U Street Corridor soaking in the rich culture associated with that. But I will be remiss if I don't talk about the good times that you had on campus. We've talked a lot about politics and preparing you for the future. I want all of you to comment on this because I know you've all heard this before, that when you go to an HBCU, one of the things that's ingrained is that you got to be 2 times better. We'll get there. But I want to talk about some fun. So Mercedes, what did you do for fun? What was the exciting part of Hampton that you take away where you say every young person should experience this?
I would say homecoming for the most part, even though I did make a trip to Howard 1 year for homecoming, but I'd say homecoming. Absolutely. That's when all of the alumni come back and they celebrate with their individual classes, and your sorority sisters sing in their circles. And just everyone is just very familial. I mean, no matter which class you were a part of, you've got your various classes with our various names. It's just all one love fest because people are so proud and so happy to see the changes that were made on campus, to see their little brother, their little sister who is still there at school, and just to take a look around and, reminisce for the most part. So I would say homecoming in a nutshell.
One vote for homecoming. Keisha?
I would also have to vote for homecoming, but to not be too duplicative, I will use my experience as an orientation leader. So although there was a lot of work involved, it was so much fun. So we had a program called being a peer dean. So we were essentially welcoming incoming students and throwing, I don't say parties, soirees is what we call them, and just welcoming them, helping them move into their dorm, helping them meet their professors. So although there was service involved, it was a ton of fun because you got to be with people in your class, and we had our own fun happening at the same time as we were welcoming the students, because it'd be like 7 o'clock in the morning and we'd be chanting outside their dorms. It was a crazy time, but it was very fun.
I wish you had been my peer dean, Keisha. Justin, I'm going to let you answer this, but we got a little video for you as well. So let me let you answer this question. I'm going to have Ned do that video for us.
Yeah, so I'll tee that up. Homecoming by far is just my favorite time of the year, and so for 2 reasons. Number one, what Howard does, and it's not unique to other schools, but we have this big yard fest where we have artists at the top of their game who come to perform, and down back when Sean Combs went to Howard, we had Biggie perform for free. When I was there, I know it was Rockefeller and Jay-Z and their whole crew performed for free. But in addition to that, to your point, Dr. Williams, I also, and I mentioned this earlier because of the unique nature of Howard being the alpha chapter for so many fraternities and sororities, we come back to my plot as an Omega, and we do our traditional hops and what have you. I guess folks would call it steps. And so I've had a lot of joy coming back and kind of performing my probate over and over again But we also have Qs from all over the country who come to our chapter in particular. And so I know the Deltas, the AKAs, it's Beta chapter for Alpha Phi Alpha, which is the second chapter, Iotas, and even Kappas we have in our yard. So it's just a very unique experience to see folks from around the country coming back and seeing their sorority sisters and fraternity brothers at the plot. So
that's great.
And
that's you had that video. Now, Justin, I just love seeing that because you're bringing me home, being able to see that those images of Howard Yard. But let's talk Greek life and let's talk culture, because one of the other things that's important about the HBCU experience is the HBCU is a communicator and an incubator of Black cultural expression. And we have all know that and seen that and experienced that, but I want to share that with our audience today. So I want to start with you, Keisha. Can you talk about the HBCU in some sense is the reservoir, the keeper of Black traditions, of Black history, of Black community?
Definitely. So I think that there's so much history there, just as you said, Dr. Williams. And I believe that coming back for homecoming and all of the other festivities that we have on campus gives us a chance to just come together and celebrate all of those accomplishments, but also commemorate and honor what has come before us and what has still to come. So for instance, although we're partying and celebrating during homecoming, we're also raising dollars for scholarships. So I think it is top of mind to us to continue to pave the legacy forward for other students who want to come after us.
Wonderful. Mercedes, same question. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm also going to ask you to frame that in the context of Greek life as well, and why that was so important for you to pledge.
Well, actually, I will say that I did not pledge Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated at the undergraduate level. I pursued my my membership at the graduate level. However, my mother pledged at undergrad, and I had the opportunity to go back to her institution, and she pledged at the second chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, Beta chapter at Wilberforce. And so just the commitment and the community that I felt when I attended with her for their 100-year celebration was immeasurable. I think they were very respectful and honored to have some of the older sorors come back on campus. And I saw that just based upon the way that they treated them and the way that they treated me. They made me feel welcomed and embraced me. And I think that tradition is definitely essential and key and evident in HBCUs and the Greek life as well. So I know that when I go back to homecoming, it's all love. No matter where everyone pledged, we're all sorority sisters. We're all on campus together. We all attended Hampton University together. So we honor that and we honor each other. And yeah, that's what we do. So.
Beautifully stated. Justin, same question, but I want to ask you that through the lens of not only Greek life, but that word tradition, which keeps coming up.
Oh, yeah. And again, this is unique to our school, because of the fact that the fraternities and sororities, many of them were founded at Howard. There are unique places on campus, such as Thurkield Hall Science Building, where my fraternity was founded. So when we do our probate, so when a new line comes out in the spring, we actually start on the steps of Thurkield Hall and then march all the way around campus. And then we conduct what's called the long walk, where it's basically from the Fine Arts Building, a long series of steps down to the end of campus. And then we end in the yard where there's a monument that's erected to our four founders. And so not only that, having November 17th, 1911 be the founding day of my fraternity, there's also the Charter Day, which was December 15th. So we have a Charter Day celebration where the first chapter of Omega was actually chartered, right? And so I can go on and on about the rich legacy of leadership at my university. I love it wholeheartedly. And as I'm sure my fellow panelists love their institutions as well. And so that's what I would say. I would also kind of just make sure that we frame this within the context of why HBCUs were even created in the first place, right? I think it was because we weren't allowed to go to regular institutions, right? So we had to somehow create our own, and with the help of our white sisters and brothers, some of these institutions were founded. And then the last thing I would say is that there is a connection between and amongst HBCUs as well. Some of the founders of one may have founded another. Some may have shared presidents, right? So there's just the camaraderie. As competitive as we are, we all swear up and down that our university is the best. I just wouldn't trade my experience for anything, and I think my panelists would say the same thing as well.
I love the way you frame that, Justin, because I would argue if there is a physical approximation of the mythical Wakanda, it is the graduates of HBCUs in the way that, as the way Mercedes articulates it, the love that you feel when you are in the presence of HBCU grads, the fire that they have for the tradition, and the recognition in some sense of that shared experience, which I think is really powerful. But let's talk about this piece, Justin, you've got us into, and I want all of you to weigh in this because we've got, questions blowing up here. A lot of people want to engage with you. I promise I will get to those questions, but I'm going to exercise a little prerogative as host to ask you this most difficult question, particularly in this moment. Beginning about 15, 20 years ago, there were some serious questions as to whether HBCUs were still relevant. Justin, as you point out, the history of slavery and segregation in this country really created the opportunity for the birth of HBCUs. We think about Howard University, founded by Oliver Otis Howard, the agricultural and technical that's tagged on to many of our institutions in the South, which really came from this tradition of seeing the HBCUs as the base to help people in the labor that at that time were places where African Americans could be employed. And so it carries that legacy. Post-integration, there was this argument that HBCUs were no longer relevant, that at some point we get to a point where why would anybody have to go to a HBCU when you go to any institution in the country? HBCUs have resisted that in arguing for the importance of tradition, the importance of culture, the importance of academics, and the strength of those institutions based on that. Let's talk about that, and I'll put the question to you plainly and ask each of the panelists to answer this. We'll start with you, Mercedes. Are HBCUs still relevant today? And if so, why?
I'd say HBCUs are extremely relevant. They've been relevant in the past as well as the present, and they will be in the future. Seeing what will occur tomorrow with Kamala Harris taking her oath to serve as our vice president, a proud alum of Howard University. We also have Keisha Lance Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, who is a product of an HBCU, FAMU, Florida A&M University, as well as Raphael Warnock, who is a Morehouse alum. So I think that they're very relevant. They produce individuals who are very bright, very intelligent, very determined, and victorious individuals who serve our community as a whole, collectively, just immensely. And so I think that there will always be a need for HBCUs because they produce the best and the brightest of our ethnicity. So
I love that and victorious, which is a beautiful way to describe that legacy. Keisha, same question. HBCU still relevant today? And if so, why?
Absolutely, without a doubt. And I would say because I know growing up in predominantly white spaces, you're not taught your history. So unless you're being taught it at home, the first time that I actually took a class and it wasn't one paragraph or one section that was talking about the civil rights movement, or we arrived from Africa on slave ships, or just talking about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, outside of that one chapter, we don't talk about Black history. And to know and to say that Black history doesn't start when we get off of those slave ships. And I think that, no, not that I think, I know that we are taught that at our respective HBCUs. So I think until that curriculum is flushed out and completely embedded, and not to say that it's a subset of U.S. history and that it's actually embedded and we talk about where we come from as a people, I think that HBCUs will absolutely remain relevant for years, decades, even centuries to come.
Love that. Justin, same question.
Yeah, and I would only add, this is especially relevant in light of the current environment, right? This racial and social reckoning that we have going on nationally in light of the George Floyd protests of last, I think it was May or June, and you know the social unrest that we've seen, right? And so culminating with a new and incoming administration, you also have this conversation. So you even see it within the corporate context. So I'm in private industry now for top 20 Fortune 100 tech company, right? And we see it in terms of the conversations we're having internally, both, well, number one, externally with our stakeholders. So we are actively looking to invest in initiatives that that specifically address social and racial justice, right? That's number one. And then number two, internally, when we talk about our HR department, our global diversity and inclusion initiatives, making sure that we're having these discussions internally amongst employees, making sure that we're being thoughtful about how we recruit talented African-American individuals. If you don't find those individuals at majority institutions, you find high performers at our HBCUs, and you will continue to find a pipeline of talent there. And so in a variety of contexts, both public and private sector, as well as the nonprofit space, this dialogue, it just continues to be furthered. And so I think, moving forward, HBCUs will play a tremendous role, whether it's in the non-governmental entity space, whether it's with various stakeholders and community associations, or in the corporate community, or in the private sector when folks are running their own businesses, right? The last thing I would say is we talk about, the effect of COVID and the disproportionate impact on African Americans, right? And so some of the most creative thought leaders who are addressing some of those problems are HBCU graduates, and we want to make sure that we're being thoughtful about how we're deploying resources so that our folks can continue to thrive.
Such a great perspective. Universities, do you want to add something to that?
Say on that note, I know that Xavier produces an incredible amount of physicians. I went to medical school with two individuals who attended Xavier University, and their rapport and their knowledge was immeasurable. And then I know that Howard is great for producing entertainers. Hampton, a diversity of individuals as well. We have a great architecture program, engineering program, as does A&T. But I know that, you had Chadwick Boseman of Black Panther. His attire, his costumes were designed by a Hampton University graduate. So we have a lot to offer to the community at large, all of our schools collectively. So yeah, they will not be going away anytime soon.
I mean, it's such perspective that we get. I'm going to take some questions and answers, but I have to do this. This is important. And I want all of you to weigh in on it, but I'm going to direct this at least initially to Mercedes and Keisha. Justin, you can speak to this because you actually work for one of the pioneering women in politics. But right now, one could argue that 2020, 2021 is the year of the Black woman. And we've seen this in the immeasurable impact that Black women have had in politics in our own Twin Cities, looking at people like Leslie Redmond, who joined our panel yesterday, Sandra Samuels and Gay Adams Massey, who will join us on Thursday, and both of you who join us today. But let's talk about the HBCU as an incubator for Black female talent and how they communicated some of those larger truths, which we saw with the incredible talent there in terms of the female professors, the staff, the Greek life that helped to inform that. Mercedes, I want to begin with you because you have such a rich experience, and Keisha, you have a little bit more of a contemporary lens. But let's talk about this. Why is that important, especially now, and as we're basking in the year of the Black woman?
Well, I think that HBCUs give you the confidence that you need to excel in any industry that you pursue. I know that it gave me the confidence to experiment and in various career opportunities. I've been to medical school, I've been to law school, several graduate schools, all PWIs, are predominantly white institutions, but they gave me the skill to be able to navigate and to stand firm in who I am as an African-American woman. But I think that they instill more so the fact that you have a power, you have a voice, and you should use it in any way that you see fit. And so I think that HBCUs will continue to contribute in that realm in elevating the Black woman. And I think that they're ready to put their feet forward in any industry. So
wonderful. Keisha?
Definitely. Just piggybacking off of that, one thing that was constantly drilled into me while at Xavier is confidence and conviction. You show up every day being confident and have conviction in your words. So seeing that we have female deans, female professors leading our departments is saying that representation matters. So it's saying if you can be up there doing that as a Black woman, it's like, what's stopping me? Because all my life I've seen people that don't look like me teach me, and it's like, okay, well, exactly what space do I fit in? I know that I can do it because I've been told all my life that I can do it, regardless of what people in the classroom are saying. I have the community backing me up saying that I can do it, but getting to Xavier and seeing it come to fruition in front of my eyes, it's like, all right, this was the final push, if you will, that I needed to say, I have living, breathing examples in front of me right now that say I can absolutely do this without a doubt, as long as I'm confident and have conviction in my words.
Wonderful. Justin?
Yeah, and I would just echo the remarks of my peers here. Sorry, I was trying to get my thoughts together. Yeah, you even see it within the context of this current election and this political climate, right? You have Black women who are all over, the dialogue, whether it's the New York Attorney General, Latita James, who is, a Howard University graduate, or Fulton County, Georgia Attorney General, Fani Willis, who is a Howard grad, I believe. And then my panelist mentioned it earlier. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Bottoms is a Florida A&M graduate. You have Stacey Abrams, who's a graduate of Spelman College. You have Raphael Warnock, who's a graduate of Morehouse. But keeping it with the females, I mean, up and down the aisle, everywhere you look, there's a instrumental African American woman who is leading in this space. And even if you go to cable news, you see MSNBC, Tiffany Cross, who's a Clark Atlanta alum. I mean, I can go on and on and on, and I'm sure we all can provide examples of leading Black women, but it's so refreshing and it's so comforting to know that if they're anything like my mom growing up, we're in good hands, definitely in good hands.
I love that. And I'm going to use that to segue into the questions and answers. I know a lot of you have questions for us, so we're going to begin to take those. But I want to take just a second to thank our panelists for sharing their perspective and also mention very briefly, and I think this is also important, I actually went from Howard University to teaching at Delaware State University, which is a historically Black college and university in the state of Delaware. It's not about where you go or where you're from, it's how you come at an HBCU. And the HBCUs always come correct. And you heard that today in talking about the role model issue and how they are incubators for innovation, how they create spaces, safe spaces that are challenging for students of color to excel, for African-American students in particular to excel. So I want to thank our panelists, and we're going to take our first question now. We'll ask for that to come up. First question is, as you meet on the eve of HBCU graduate Kamala Harris's inauguration, how important is it to continue to cultivate Black leaders?
Well, I'll take that question. I know that Hampton University's president, Dr. William Harvey, has a leadership institute, and he feels that it's really important to help nurture and cultivate the next generation of leaders. He has been at Hampton University for over 40 years, and he is electing to step down in 2022. And I have mixed emotions about that because he's done such an exceptional job. But he realizes that it's time to turn over a new leaf and let the others who have the exposure and have the experience now lead the way. And so he takes leadership very seriously, as do most HBCUs, as do I.
And I just add on to that quickly to say that when you have top leaders of Fortune 500 companies coming out and saying, well, there's not a large pool of Black talent to pull from, I think that's a prime example of why we still need HBCUs and why we need more Black leaders to be in those conversations to say, I don't think that, maybe you shouldn't say that, because that actually is not true. I can show you by all of these different candidates and people that are in my personal network, but that are also on a national platform. So I think that Black leaders are definitely still relevant and are bred out of HBCUs.
Great point,
Yeah.
Justin.
And I would only add that it's just absolutely essential because in order for young graduates to kind of see themselves in various spaces, it's important to have a Kamala Harris or a Kasim Reed or David Dinkins or some of these folks that have reached the highest level of whatever profession they're in, right? And I've even seen it staffing some of these principals and being around young people. I'm talking like my nephew's age, 7 years old, 5 years old. Who look up to these individuals because they see images of themselves and folks with their hair and folks who look the same way that they do and may talk the same way that they do. So I think that is just so key. And I'm immensely proud that Senator Harris, now soon to be Vice President Harris, is continuing on that tradition of African American leadership for the global community.
We're going to take the next question. You mentioned if there are any CEOs or employers watching, it's often said that it's difficult to find talent in the African American community. And I would argue that you have to adjust where you're looking. HBCUs continue to produce some of the finest graduates in the country, well equipped and well prepared to take on day one and make a difference in all the industries that have been described today, from the medical field to the fields of law and politics to human resources. You name it. So it's really about where you look, and you have to be creative in adjusting your gaze and looking for that talent in those spaces. I'd also say, just very quickly before we go on to the next question, that we want to encourage young people to think about opportunities here in the Twin Cities for education. But if they go off to an HBCU, we also have to work toward building a community they're going to want to come back to, that they're going to see as welcoming and accommodating in the ways that Mercedes, Keisha, and Justin described today. And that's an important part of our work as well. So let's take this next question for our panelists. This is from Brenda Rainey. Each of you have parents who attended HBCUs, which sounds like a great foundation for making your choice to attend an HBCU. How do your schools reach students who are first gen or from non-legacy families, especially from states like Minnesota?
Well, I would say that you should definitely tap into the resources that are here, available to you here in the Twin Cities now. I know that there are several churches that do HBCU tours, and that's a way to solicit students to participate or actually matriculate into HBCUs. We also have networking opportunities as well. I know that the United Negro College Fund, along with Dolores Works, as well as East Metro Civic Alliance and Alpha Phi Alpha and Alpha Kappa Alpha, put together an HBCU gathering at the Minnesota History Center or Society. I believe last February, I can't recall, but that was a way for people to network and get to know one another and kind of reach other individuals who were continuing to pursue college careers. So I think networking, as well as taking advantage of the opportunities that are available within the Twin Cities, as well as college fairs put on by the St. Paul Public Schools, as well as St. Peter's AME Church, they can help you with that in terms of looking into various schools.
And not only that, go ahead.
Well, I was just doing your own research.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and not only that, our School of Business, so like the Howard University School of Business, also has a corporate sponsor. I think when I was in school, it was Target, which may still be headquartered in Minneapolis. Companies like Medtronic, I think they're also have a solid foundation there. I think they recruit heavily at FAMU, right? So what we do once the students are here is a lot of times some of those students want to go back to where they grew up, right? And so we also try to create pathways so that they can return, to their communities as well.
And just one last addition, I would say that majority, if not all, of the fraternities and sororities, or the Black fraternities and sororities, have some type of mentorship or outreach program. So specifically for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we have a program called Delta Academy and Delta Gyms that looks at middle school and high school young ladies. So by getting involved in programs like that, they are exposed to Black women a lot who have attended HBCUs, and then we also have a HBCU and a career fair during those programs. So similar to what both of the panelists said, just getting involved in the community and finding the resources that are out there, because there are tons.
And one other quick point, I know my fraternity as well, and here in Georgia, I received a scholarship while I was matriculating through Howard from one of the local chapters here. So I think something similar may exist in Minnesota for both my fraternity as well as some of the other fraternities and sororities.
Yeah, I think so speaking of scholarships, just to throw it out there, Mercedes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that our being Minneapolis St. Paul alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated has a scholarship program that may still currently be open.
It is open.
So, okay, perfect. So another way to get involved and get dollars if you need them.
I love what's being offered here. We'll need to offer some resources for folks who are watching the program. Minnesota Historical, we'll try to put up a list of resources for you to be able to follow up on some of the great suggestions you've got from our panelists. Let's take our next question. So this is from Jonathan Jones. HBCUs produce the most Black professionals, in particular educators. How do we connect our local school districts to HBCUs to increase more teachers of color here in the Twin Cities?
I'll say that I've tried to do that. I know that HBCUs produce the largest number of PhDs, and that's why I'm currently pursuing my PhD from my alma mater, Hampton University. But I think that just having alumni go back to some of these school districts and, be the face or the resource that they need to connect to HBCUs. I know that I was the resource when I was in my high school, and that I elected to apply to an HBCU, and my school knew nothing about it. They wanted me to get the research for them to bring back to other students in the future. And so I think just being a walking billboard and extending a hand to offer those connections is definitely needed. So.
Yeah, and then I would add, a lot of times, some of our local educational institutions at the local level aren't aware of the rich talent that comes from these universities. So I think it goes both ways. Again, I kind of liken it to my corporation. We try to kind of educate some of our internal stakeholders about how talented the students are at Howard University and Fisk University and Meharry University, et cetera, right? And so a lot of times there's just a lack of awareness. So the more that we can do at a local level to educate folks in those local school districts who may not be aware of the talent, the resources that are available can also help as well.
Thank you. We'll take that next question, please. So can you talk about the network of alumni this is a great question, after you graduated, did you have support from HBCU grads beyond your 4 years? I see that smile, Keisha. We'll start with you because you are smiling ear to ear.
Oh, of course. I'm just picking up off the vibes that the other panelists are giving me too. I feel like we have the same exact answer across all three of us. And that is absolutely yes. I can pick up the phone today and call the dean of business back at Xavier and say, hey, this is what I have going on right now. Do you know anyone in these sectors and these industries to connect me with in order to get to X, Y, and Z? So that network is ridiculously strong. And not only that, being that I joined Delta at Xavier University through the Gamma Alpha chapter, that's an entire different network right there. That's over 300,000 college educated women. So there are so many different connection points that come out of that HBCU experience. So without a doubt, yeah, I can call up probably within 2 or 3 degrees of separation within my network to say, hey, I have a question about anything basically, and I can get an answer or get connected with someone who knows.
I say it is one big happy family, literally. I mean, whether you went to Jackson State or Russ College or, Wiley College or wherever, it's one big happy family. And like to Keisha's point, if you don't know someone else will know someone within that network, within that circle, and they can get you the resource that you need. I know I have, like she mentioned, clinicians, from physicians to nurse practitioners to dentists to attorneys, anything that you need, plethora of individuals. They're right there in the network, and so they're willing and they're able to assist in any way, shape, or form. So I speak with some of my friends every week faithfully on Saturday evenings, and we support one another, and we throw things out there like, if you need this, if you don't need that, or what have you. It's just all, like I said, love. That's my common denominator for every answer, basically, love. So
yeah, I would only add, my best man at my wedding is somebody I met freshman year on the campus of Howard University. I have classmates that were literally in class with Chadwick Boseman and in the School of Fine Arts at Howard. Folks in every industry at the highest levels. You can find a Howard grad, and even if it's not, right. So from what I do in my day job, I'm in the government affairs space, right, and I cover one of the states I cover is Alabama, right, and so the mayor of Birmingham is Morehouse alum. So I've literally reached out to my friends who went to school and who pledged with the mayor of Birmingham regarding some business initiatives and trying to get meetings and things. So on and on and on. It's just a phenomenal network, that you carry with you for the rest of your entire life. So can't say enough about
it. As you can say, I might add that one of my friends in my weekly network, their children are now going to, Hampton or to Spelman or what have you. And so we're connecting those children. And so it's never ending. It's on, and it will always be here. So. Yeah.
And those networks are really powerful. I have a good friend who went to Morehouse with Raphael Warnock, and the other day he posted, after Reverend Warnock's victory, an image of all of them in a Zoom, friends for, so many years and still connected. And I agree, that is the HBCU experience, a really powerful connective tissue. We have time, I think, for one more question, so let's see. This is from Kimberly. What key factors would you recommend Minnesota high school students consider when researching and selecting an HBCU, perhaps even outside the Midwest?
I'd say just tap into your what do you want to do long-term prospectively in life, and then just research a school that offers that as a major, and then find someone who is actually doing that as a vocation, and tap into their resources as well, and just ask them to serve as a mentor, and then go from there.
Great advice. Anything to add?
Just to add to that, I would say looking at it from a geography perspective. So is there a certain part of the country that you haven't been to that you're really interested in? I feel like college is a time for exploration. So not only finding a school that specializes in something that you want to go into along the lines of what Mercedes was saying, but also in the culture of the city that you're interested in, because you never really get those 4 years back. So take that time to explore and have fun.
Yeah, and I'd only reiterate, the first thing would be to research to the extent that you want to major in something. Obviously, there are HBCUs that specialize in various spaces, right? The second thing is I would talk to as many HBCU alum, even if you don't have them in your families. Try to connect with either us or anybody within your network who can tell you about the experience, right, and why they chose their HBCU over others. And then the third thing is, to the extent that I think one of the panelists mentioned the college tours, right? I think I made my decision to go to Howard because I went to a pre-orientation class where we kind of took students from all across the country, spend like maybe a week or two at Howard, and it was during that time that I just knew that I would see those folks in the fall. And so I think experiencing it firsthand is just a really, really authentic way to kind of cement your decision.
And I would additionally say that don't play down mentorship. I know that my husband and I mentor several students within the Twin Cities or throughout the Twin Cities, and we elect to, when this pandemic kind of teeters off, we plan to take several students to various schools. I know that he's a proud Morehouse alum. I'm a proud Hampton alum. And so those two schools will definitely be on our agenda. But I think that, just meeting individuals from various schools and, having them take you under their wing would be immeasurable. They could take you to their schools and show you what they're all about and have you experience those campuses and those students while there. So.
Thank you, Mercedes. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, Justin. We said today that we were going to take you on a journey to talk about the legacy of Black leadership at HBCUs, but what you got was a glimpse into the beautiful tapestry of experiences that people have at historically Black colleges and universities. You got to see how the legacy of tradition and service inform not only the academic excellence that all of these individuals display, but also the timeless education that one encounters at an HBCU that equips them for life in the real world and all the challenges that come as a result. In a nation and at a time where we desperately need access to all talent, and we should be elevating all of our young people to the highest forms of excellence. Don't sleep on the HBCU experience. It certainly is part of that uplift tradition and has served this nation well in the production of scholars, entertainers, professionals who have really contributed greatly to the American experience. We want you to join us next time when we join Sandra Samuels and Gay Adams Maskey in talking about staying in the fight to continue our Black History and Black Voices series here at the Minnesota Historical Society. Until then, be safe, take care of each other, and HBCUs forever.
Take care.